Southern Korea has a great capability in building tanks. I think they'll be sending tanks to Poland that they're buying their replacement there. Now, whether they go to Ukraine is an open question, and they're particularly good at ground rocket, ground force combat systems. In our language, it is like the HIMARS, multi-launch rocket system. And what Korea is offering is slightly better. It's got a longer range. It's got longer potency. Whether that's going to happen, whether it's going to happen in time, which we'll be talking about for Mr. Zelensky's forces in Ukraine, is a very open question.
Can you just tell us a bit more what you understand about the troops that are being sent to support Russia at the moment?
Well, I understand, and there's been detailed analysis by Jack Watling, who is about the best analyst of the ground warfare in and around Ukraine in London at the moment. Jack Watling of the Royal United Services Institute. And he goes into great detail about who these people are. I think they're from the 11th Brigade, the ones that have been seen training in two training grounds. They're not camps. They're actually active military training grounds northwest of Vladivostok. But some of those have already got to the front. That is absolutely clear. Jack's view is that they're pretty good. And they're probably a lot better than a lot of the Russians around them, certainly of the National Guard that they'll be working with and working alongside in Kursk, because they're capable of doing combined arms maneuver. Break that down. That means units with different disciplines and different capabilities. Armored light, that's tanks, armored infantry, artillery, intimate close rocket support can all work together. And this is what Russia has been so slow in accomplishing in 2.5 years of war in Ukraine so far. They're beginning to get the act together, as we can see on the Pokrov's front, and that is ominous now. But the Koreans are very well trained. Two problems, though. They're not very well fed. They're fit, but they seem to be absolutely, truly lean and mean. And of course, there are tremendous language problems. We have had notice of a Russian call out for interpreters, and they've put a lot of investment in it, which suggests that the presence isn't going to stop at 10 or 12,000. Jack and people like him who are familiar with watching week by week North Korea's military posturing think that they could spare up to 100,000 for the Ukrainian front.
A Ukrainian delegation is expected to go to South Korea soon to coordinate the response to the deployment of these troops. How involved do you think South Korea might become?
Well, they've been very reluctant hitherto because they don't want to have their concerns about North Korea to be become balled up with the Ukrainian contest. Now, it looks as if this is worrying them. It's worrying that Russia is now firmly behind Kim Jong Un. They are fearful of a probe, even military exercises that could lead to open hostilities between North and South. Southern Korea has a great capability in building tanks. I think they'll be sending tanks to Poland that they're buying their replacement there. Now, whether they go to Ukraine is an open question, and they're particularly good at ground rocket, ground force combat systems. In our language, it is like the HIMARS, multi-launch rocket system. And what Korea is offering is slightly better. It's got a longer range. It's got longer potency. Whether that's going to happen, whether it's going to happen in time, which we'll be talking about for Mr. Zelensky's forces in Ukraine, is a very open question.
And how do you think that NATO and South Korea will respond to North Korea becoming more belligerent in the war?
I think reluctantly and very slowly, if the recent record of the past 2.5 years is anything to go by. This is a terrible test for NATO now. It's actually in its capabilities. of what it considers itself between its allies and its capabilities in terms of Articles 3, 4, and 5, not just Article 5, the Mutual Defence Agreement. I think I don't use the term like existential because existential is always used wrongly, but it is about the very nature and being capable and purpose of the NATO alliance. And if they get this one wrong, and I fear they're going to get it wrong in the next 3 to 6 weeks, it's going to show in many, many aspects it's not fit for purpose.
When you say you fear that NATO will get this wrong in the next 3 to 6 weeks, how do you think it's going to go wrong?
Well, the situation is desperate on the ground in Ukraine because the Russian capability of mass is really telling, particularly on the Avdiivka and Pokrovsk fronts. They're pushing along there. As I was saying, they're beginning to combine operations. I mean, they had the preparation, according to the Institute for the Study of War, which is one of the most reliable open sources on this. They seem to have had a capability of operating with up to 4 battalion task groups, BTGs, which they had not shown that coordination before. They're moving on the Kursk front. They have gained more territory in a month in the past month than they've ever done in a single month in the war since February 2.5 years ago. So, and the weather is still holding. So if they really push, I mean, will there be a collapse on the part of the Ukrainian forces? This is deeply concerning, and it's because I think of this rather unfocused approach of NATO and its allies. NATO, particularly under the Biden administration, has been prepared to say as much about what it won't do as what it can do and what it should be doing. And of course, the one of the real test cases has been deep strike weapons. Like Taurus and above all Storm Shadow and the American equivalent. But even that probably wouldn't change the game now that Russia is not only pushing, benefiting from the good weather, but operating new terror tactics, using kamikaze drones to kill civilians all along the in-depth area along the line of hostility.
You mentioned the budget here that's just taken place in the United Kingdom. If we look across the pond to the US, days away from the US election, Trump said he would end the war in 24 hours, and the Democrats seem to not want the war to go on too long. Is now the time for a settlement or not?
Well, the settlement isn't available. Putin must be rubbing his hands. Well, we know that because the settlement will be entirely, almost exclusively on his own terms. There will be a settlement and it'll be an awful one. And I think that possibly that the thing to grab, there will be the maximum that they can get is probably a buffer zone. And the key is Ukrainian sovereignty. But that's what worries me about Putin. In the Putin mindset, in Putin-orama, Ukraine is not a separate nation state and people. It is part of Russia. And I think that's what he's going to push and push and push at.
So what do you think the likelihood is right now of this war dragging on with each side accepting that their objective, instead of winning, is not to lose, rather than going for any kind or considering any kind of settlement right now?
Well, I think that's the question. You know, I was at a conference in Berlin just a few days ago where diplomats, retired soldiers were saying, you know, how can it look? How can we win? And 2 of us said, well, actually, it's what a loss looks like that you've really got to ask. By the way, I am very critical. After 60 years, I began my journalistic career at university 60 years ago last month, that I have never seen such flabbiness in public administration and diplomacy about that. And Ukraine is turning out to be a disaster if we're not careful. I think that there will be an awful settlement, which won't really be a settlement. Now, we're hearing at the moment this wonderful new expression of the buzzword, it's been around, of frozen conflict, of conflicts that go into the freezer and come out. Nagorno-Karabakh was one, and Ossetia in 2008 was another, and Cyprus always has that potential. I can go on and on, and the Palestinian conflict has barely got off the ring heater. That there's been very little tranquility there. I think we're going to see half-frozen conflicts, and this is the thing that this is what I'm pushing at the moment. You heard it here first. We're going to have semi-Freddo conflicts. We're going to have things that are not quite ice cream, and they're not quite the full sweet. It depends in the long term, because things are looking pretty good for Russia now. But the medium to long term, and I stick to this, is how long can you sustain what it is doing to the Russian economy and society, and looking out towards the end of the month, and the budget. I mean, the budget is crazy. He has just reversed his budget, increased it by 25%, which is enormous. It's exactly just over double the British military budget on an economy which is somewhere between Spain and Italy. So it's well down. So how on earth they're going to do that? And actually, they're also likely to have to go for mass recruiting, a proper mobilization. And I think that it will become more and more obvious that Putin land is under an undeclared but very obvious martial law regime.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. My thanks to our producers today, Louis Sykes and Morgan Burdick, and for you for watching. If you'd like to support us, you can subscribe now, or you can listen to Times Radio for the latest news and in-depth analysis, or go to thetimes.co.uk. For now, though, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.